Hey everybody, happy Sunday. For me it's a studio Sunday, and you too, because you're watching me. I'm Jessica Putnam-Phillips from Clayshare, and we're going to open the baby kiln. Now I fired this little kiln 3 times in the last week because it's the perfect size for doing lots of little test pieces so that I can see how a glaze is going to look before I use it on a lot of pieces and put it in my big kiln, which is right there, that kiln there. So this isn't going to be a big kiln opening. You know, often the kiln openings I do, I will go through everything. We'll talk about every glaze, and it can take up to an hour because there's a lot of pots in the kiln. This one I still will talk about all the glazes and everything that's in here, but because it's a smaller kiln, it's not going to take that long unless we just want to chat, right? So super excited to see what this looks like. There are 2 glazes. First started doing production pottery years ago were 2 of my staples. They were the glazes that I made for functional wear, and I had customers back week after week when I was doing festivals and markets to buy that work to collect it. So it is my cranberry and my Oribe glaze, and those are going to be available this fall from Clayscapes Pottery. And I'm doing some more testing with them because I haven't used them too much lately, and I just wanted to have some good examples to share with you all so that you could see it. Now also got a few pieces because I made a new batch of my Chun Blue, and what I like to do when I make that glaze is it's a funny glaze because you think it's too thick, but it's not. And I mixed it up and I was thinking it looked perfect, but here's the thing is when you think my Chun Blue looks perfect, it's too thin, and we're going to see how that turned out. So this was a cone 5 firing. I did an hour-and-a-half preheat. It was on medium speed, and at the end I did a 10-minute hold. So at the top temperature it held for 10 minutes, and then it shut itself off. Now it took 10 hours to fire. It finished up at about 5 o'clock, and now it's down to about 86, so we can open it up and check it out and see what's in it. So I'm glad you all are going to hang out with me and do this today. If you have any questions about glazing, questions about kilns, questions about pottery, this is your chance to ask. All right, so are we ready to do this, everyone? Are we all ready? I'm ready. Are we ready? Over on the tech side, I want to check to make sure everybody's good. All right, we are gonna do it. I'm opening up the kiln. Hold on, everybody. I wish I had a drum roll. I need a little something. Ready? Oh. So I think we're going to be doing 2 camera view for this for everybody that is on Clayshare, the Clayshare app, on Vimeo, on YouTube, and on Facebook. Y'all going to get the overhead view too. Everybody on Instagram, hi, all of you on Instagram. Unfortunately, we can only do 1 camera view for Instagram. So let's just take a look at the cone pack. I don't always use a cone pack with such a small little kiln. You don't necessarily need to, but it's nice to know when you're doing a test for a glaze that cone 5, which is right here, that I achieved cone 5, so I know that the kiln got to temperature. So if there's any problems in here, it's not going to be due to the kiln not getting to temperature. So that's very important. So that's my cone pack. And actually, Kev, where'd you put my cone pack from the other week?
Right behind the vent there.
Oh man, he's hiding stuff on me. I'm gonna find it. Here we go. So this was from the firing I did on Tuesday. And this is today's firing. So we can compare 2 firings and see how consistent they are. Completely even, which is normal when you first get a kiln. When they're brand new, they should be even for a long time. As they get older, you will start to see your kiln running a little cooler, and that's normal as the elements wear down. So that's a completely normal thing to have happen. Okay, wow, guess what? There's no making you wait. All of the tests are right on top, but we'll start with this carved piece. So this is a vase that I carved. This is Laguna B-Mix. That's the clay I used. The black is Speedball Black Underglaze. And I applied, I would say 2 coats of the underglaze on this. And then I carved it using the palm carver from Diamond Core Tools. That's also their P1 carver. And the glaze on this is my Chun Blue. And this is what I'm talking about. The Chun is a little thin on this. And you can see it looks great, it's still shiny, but it doesn't have much blue to it. That's not really a problem for something like this because I've got a rim right here of blue. That's beautiful, but if I dipped it a second time, it would have had more blue. I would have only dipped the top though. I wouldn't have dipped the whole thing. I see, Lori wants to know if I'm going to answer questions about life. I will do my best. If I have an answer for you, my dear, I'll share it. So this I'm really happy with, and the reason that I did a test of a big piece in my little kiln is because you all might know I made my uncle's urn and I carved it, so it's a hand-carved urn. I definitely want to make sure when I glaze that piece, the glaze is perfect. I don't want to risk ruining that piece. So I'm actually probably going to do another test of my chun because I'm going to let it thicken in the bucket. I'm going to skim the extra water off my chun, and then I'm going to mix it up again, glaze something else, and see if it comes out a little bluer, because I'm not going to remake the whole urn. That would just, no, we're not going to do that. So this one turned out great. I think, gosh, when did I carve this? Did I carve this during, no, this wouldn't have been Clayshare Con. That would have been too long ago. But it was a little while ago. So this is how I know my chun is way too thin. I did a test tile. It basically looks like Amoco ice right now. That's what it looks like. It's supposed to be blue. How blue? Well, let me show you. Both on the same clay. This is what it should look like. This is Laguna B-Mix 5 with my chun to the correct thickness. Here it is on the piece I just did. So those of you who are always saying to me, and there's blue. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a tiny bit of blue in the recesses, a tiny bit, but it's not this blue. It should be this blue. So if you're getting this, it's too thin, you need to pull some water out of it and try again. This is how it is. This is one dip. One dip gets this blue. So hopefully that will help everybody. I get so many messages about the chun being too thin, and I know it seems like it's too thick, but it's supposed to seem too thick. It is. It's just the glaze. It's how it is. All right, 2 other test tiles. So here's my Oribe. This Oribe glaze is based on a cone 10 Oribe glaze, which I have adjusted the recipe and brought it down to make it a cone 5-6. This can even go to cone 7, this glaze here. It's a transparent grass green, and it's based on a Japanese glaze. And I have been using this glaze for about 16, 17 years. And before that, as a high fire glaze for like 20 years. So this is a great glaze. This is going to be available this fall. And what I love about this is it really shows the texture. So you can really see the texture on this little baby plate. Yeah, I am loving my baby kiln. I see Stacy, you noticed I'm loving the baby kiln. For me, when you're making production pieces, or if you're making pottery you're going to sell or commissioned pieces, you really need to be sure the glaze turns out right. And for me, it's worth it to have a test kiln that I can quickly fire. It'll be ready the next day, and I know that glaze is good. I don't have to guess. I also can do tests for glaze combos for pieces too. So for me, this is an invaluable tool. They're not for everybody, and I don't think this would be a kiln you would want as your main kiln unless you only make small things, because this is only 11 inches across, right? That's it. It's 11 inches across. That's not going to get you to big pieces, and actually you have to consider the thermocouples in here too. So honestly, I think this is good if you do small things, but there are kilns that are a tiny bit bigger than this. That might be a better solution if you don't want a big kiln like I have. Oh, a question about my aunt's sink. My aunt's sink is bisque, so I threw my aunt a sink, and I'm just waiting for her to pick a glaze. And that's part of the reason this is so fabulous, because I can make these little tests. She can look at these and decide what glaze she wants on the sink, because there's no way I want to remake her sink for her. I want to do it right. So this is one of the reasons why I love it. So here's the Oribe. It's gorgeous, fabulous. When you go thicker, it's a little bluer. thinner. It's a little more brownish to it, and it's great on texture. And I've got a piece in here, I'll show you underpainting with it too. And then this one, which is my cranberry, which every bowl I ever made with this glaze that I took to a market or a festival, if it was the holiday season, gone, just gone, because it is a true, deep, gorgeous, luscious cranberry. And yes, it still will show your texture. Look at that. So the cranberry and the oribe will be out from Clayscapes soon. I'm saying fall. We'll see when they come out, but you get a green and a cranberry. Also good holiday colors. Now, I plan to do a bunch of tests with this layering to see what happens with the cranberry. The oribe layers amazingly well. So Kathy has a question about the carving. So Kathy, the way the process works, it's sgraffito. So let me grab that vase. And the way sgraffito works is you put an underglaze or a slip on your clay when it's leather hard. Then you carve through. So you carve through showing the light clay body underneath. Then you bisque fire it just like normal. And then you just glaze and fire it. So yeah, you do bisque fire it after putting on the underglaze, but that's part of the process of making. So it's just like I threw this vase, trimmed it, applied the slip, and actually black underglaze and then carved it. So my oribe recipe is not out there because Clayscapes Pottery is going to be selling it. Same with my cranberry. So because I have an agreement with them, I can't sell the glaze. I can't sell it because they're going to be making and selling it. That would be like McDonald's giving me their cheeseburger recipe and I tell y'all it. I can't do that. Or Amico giving me the recipe for one of their glazes and I share it. So it's just how the industry is, but you can get it from Clayscapes, right? So I wanted more than just these little test tiles, of course. So I glazed a piece in my cranberry so you could see what it looks like on, and this is still B-Mix. So this is one of my magic shakers. And here is the cranberry. So you can see texture, no texture. But look how nice that melt is. What I really look for in a glaze when I'm doing a test, so I've got a couple things. I look for crazing, no crazing. I look for pinholing, no pinholing at all here. You know, I look for coverage. That is perfect coverage. I'm not seeing any spots that are uneven. I'm not seeing any spots that look washed out. This will break light on any area that has like ridges, so you can just barely see a little lighter area right here on the top of the little knob on the finial. So you can see that there too. So did I do a video for making the bathroom sink? I did not do a class for the sink. I will do a class. It's on the never getting shorter list of classes for me to film. But yeah, there will be a sink class, a wheel thrown, and actually, my jellyfish bowl, which I just shared yesterday, that class would be a great hand-built sink, just so y'all know. They will be available as dippable to begin with. These two, these two, the cranberry and the oribe. But they will be brushable down the line, I'm pretty sure, because Clayscapes is making all of their glazes brushable. So if you like cranberry colors, I wish the lighting was better on these when I bring them in close. We have more stuff in the kiln though. And so I see a few people asking about finished pieces of mine. I do online sales a few times a year. And I do open studio events where you can actually come to my studio and purchase it. When I do workshops, I bring pieces to sell. And the Clay Studio in Philadelphia sells my soldier plates. You might have seen, I've got some behind me on the wall. They have those there. So I'm not sure when my next online sale is going to be. If my workshop that I'm planning on doing at Clayscapes in that's the end of August, beginning of September. If that goes through and we don't have to reschedule, I'll have pieces there for participants to purchase. And, you know, if you're in the area, I can make arrangements. But the next online sale, I don't know when we're doing it.
Maybe July.
Maybe July. Maybe July. There's a lot that has to go into it. So we can segue off into the new Amico underglazes because I have a few in there. This is the Mandarin Orange along with the Flame Red. So I did that as a heart lace dish. And then here's the Carmine with the, I believe this one is the avocado green, but guess what? I've got my greens. Nope, leaf green. Carmine, leaf green, and soft pink. That's this one. And this was the soft pink and the blue frost together, just playing with two colors to see how they would look. So Barbara says she used my Chun Blue with one dip and it was very, very light. So, and Clayscapes told you to dip it twice and you were afraid it would run, so you didn't listen. So here's the thing, you shouldn't have to dip it twice to get a nice deep blue. One dip should give you, well, it's not deep, but give you the blue color. This cup right here, this is one dip to get the blue. This is one dip and I didn't get the blue. So the glaze is not thick enough. I need to scrape some water, scoop some water off and remix it and use it again. It'll be fine. So what size big kiln do I use? You want to get a big kiln using GR Pottery Forms, and some of the sizes are pretty wide. So Kristen, my big kiln, which isn't the biggest kiln I actually have a gigantic gas fire 16 cubic foot kiln out back, but this one here is 7 cubic feet. It's the E23T from L&L. The 23 means it's 23 inches across. So that means I can put plates and platters or anything up to 23 inches across in it. That's that diameter, but height-wise, it's 27 inches tall. So I can do a piece that's 23 by 27, one piece that big in this kiln, in my larger kiln, which is right here. If I want to do a piece that large, but by having a 23-inch diameter kiln, I can do platters that are at least 23 inches, which is pretty big. And if you need to go bigger, they do have a 28-inch wide one, and they make them shorter. You don't have to have them that tall. So if you make lots of really wide pieces and you don't need height, you can get a kiln configured exactly like you need it. And talk to Drew at Clayscapes. He will help you out. He will find out what you need, and he will point you to the correct kiln. So you don't have to worry about getting a kiln that's more than you need or a kiln that's not going to do everything that you like. So the cranberry, I see someone mentioned it looks like a reduction red. It does. It looks like a copper red, but without such the fuss, right? So you could definitely fire that in oxidation. This will not look like this in reduction. No, not at all. Nothing like that. It would be green in reduction. It would be a dark olive green in reduction, this glaze here. And it's formulated to cone 5, cone 6. This likes cone 6 really well. And as you could see, it did great at cone 5. So if you go to 6, you might be able to push it to 7. So why do I preheat my glaze fire for an hour and a half? That's a really good question. So we have two types of water that we're trying to burn off our pottery. We have chemical and physical water. So when we're doing our first fire, our bisque fire, we want to do a nice long preheat because the physical water is coming off of steam. And if you go too fast, that can erupt and actually make your pottery blow apart. Similar thing when we're doing glaze firing. You have dipped your piece or brushed your piece in a glaze, so the clay has absorbed water. So you have physical water in there, and still there's chemical water too. So I do that hour and a half preheat to help burn off the physical water. The chemical water doesn't start coming off until we get later and it gets a little hotter in the kiln. But physical water comes off at the very beginning. So what the 1.5 hour preheat does is it takes it up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, holds it there for an hour and a half for me, and that lets the rest of the water in the glaze come out. I just feel it's a better firing and you get better results for doing that. So that, and I've been doing that for years and years, and it's just part of my practice now. So you've only do low fire glazes 05, 06. Can you use these glazes? They will not mature at 05, 06. They will be very matte and they might even flake off. They won't have bonded properly to the surface. You really need to take these up to cone. You could probably do 4. You could get away with cone 4 with this. but I wouldn't go much lower. No, you need to get it up to the temperature it's formulated to go to, because it's all chemistry and all the parts of this glaze melt at a specific temperature. So you have to get it to that temperature for them to melt. If not, they don't melt. They just kind of sit there and then flake off. So it would make you unhappy. So the underglazes that I'm showing, I see there was a question about the underglazes. These are Speedball's new colors. That's what these underglazes are. Oh, we've got more pieces in the kiln. So let's see. Does Amico underglaze not stick to shelves just like Speedball underglaze? Amico has a couple different lines of underglazes. Their velvet underglazes, I have found, do not stick. They have their lugs, L-U-G line. I haven't tested those, so I can't vouch for them. But the underglazes that are velvet and Speedballs, those work. In your community kiln, you have an Amico velvet underglaze stick to the shelf. Some of the newer ones have a sheen to them. Right, so you need to check and test them. I know Speedball doesn't stick, but other companies do because they have flux in it, and some of them start to melt. Yeah. So Rich wants to know if I ever had to cut a kiln shelf down. Rich, I have. You're not going to like my answer. I've needed a half a kiln shelf, and basically I took a half of a half, right? So what I did is I took my big one out and I set it on some bricks, and I just kind of cracked it and I hit it with a hammer until it broke in half. It's not a perfect, but it worked. I actually, Kev, do you want to grab me a half shelf over there? Because I didn't have a way to cut it, but you could use a diamond bladed saw, right? With a tile, so here's what I got. It works, right? But I would not suggest this for a professional result. I would use a tile saw and make sure it's very wet and cut it with a tile saw. That's what I would suggest doing now. But me in my studio, sometimes I you know, that's the whole thing. Do as I say, not as I do sometimes. I knew better, but I didn't have a tile saw, and I needed half a shelf. It was a thing.
Make it away with a angle grinder and a masonry blade.
So Kevin says you might be able to get away with an angle grinder and a masonry blade, but you got to keep it wet when you're doing it. Make sure you have a bottle of water you're pouring on this shelf, not the whole saw, not the electric part, just the shelf part. Please? All right, so Marianne says she just ordered a whole bunch of all the new Speedball underglazes. You're going to love them. They're gorgeous. So how long do I preheat for a bisque? Janet wants to know. 3 hours. My bisque is a 3-hour preheat for normal pieces. If I'm doing thick pieces or sculptural pieces, I'll do a 6 to 8 hour preheat on a bisque. So it depends what you have going in the kiln. If I'm, you know, when I'm teaching at schools, I usually do a little longer because people tend to make their pieces a little too thick, or they're not quite as dry as people think they are. So I'll do a 6 to 8 hour preheat sometimes for those. Kids projects, I always do a 6 to 8 hour preheat because I love working with children and they love to make really thick pots. So go a little longer on that preheat because it can save you from having an explosion. So you had the Amico Velvet stick to you at cone 6. So everybody, like we always say, test, 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 right? I don't use the Amico Velvets on the bottom of my pieces. I only use Speedballs, underglazes on the bottom. And even then, well, you can see right here, I use Speedball underglaze on the bottom here. And because this is what I did. I carved the piece, and I didn't want the piece to end at the foot. I wanted it to wrap around and actually be on the bottom too. So the design goes all the way around. I had crazy time in the studio, and I decided I wanted to just carve a chunk of a cup, but not the whole thing, because I realized carving the whole thing was more than I could cope with that day. This is studio life, right? Sometimes you start something and you realize, I want to carve another cup. So I did a very full, busy, lots going on here, and then quiet, beautiful quiet on this side. So it's like two-faced, right? Double-sided, things going down. All right, we've got a couple more pieces. I wanted to show you my Oribe on a textured piece. Now, what I did is I took red iron oxide, and I did a very light wash on the entire little dish, and then I wiped it back, and then I also did red iron oxide on the edge. Do you see how I have just a deep, dark, beautiful brown edge right there. And that's because I put that red iron oxide on first, then glazed on top with my Oribe. Rich, you bought 10 shelves at a garage sale for $10, but they're too big. So cut them, you can cut them down. Use a masonry, make sure you use a masonry blade for that and keep it wet. And then the last piece that I've got in the kiln. So hi Rosie from Australia tuning in, and Nona's here. And so Christine, your project for the day is cutting a kiln shelf with your tile cutter. Yes, make sure you keep it wet though. Whenever you're cutting anything ceramic, make sure you keep it wet when you're cutting. All right, so this right here is my Oribe also on B-Mix. And again, another thing we can talk about is when you're testing out a glaze or using a glaze, you have to look at how it fits. So here we have no pinholing. It melted. We have a beautiful smooth surface. So both my Oribe and both my cranberry, cone 5, perfect melt. We have no pinholing. Pinholing can happen when you bisque fire if you don't bisque fire hot enough or long enough. You got to get those air bubbles out. The clay is off-gassing during bisque firing. You have to let all of that get out and burn out. So this is part of the reason why I do a slow bisque fire too. So what I did on this one is I used that same red iron oxide and I painted a little kind of fern pattern on the piece before it was glazed, and then I brushed red iron oxide on the rim all the way around, and then I dipped this in my Oribe, and you can see on the back I just did my initials. The feet are not glazed because they were sitting on the shelf, and you can see how that glaze covers. So this is truly a grass green. I sometimes call it grass green because people have a hard time with Oribe. It's a Japanese word. And I actually don't know what Oribe means. I think it's just the name of the glaze. So here's the thing, a lot of times glazes mean the region. In Japan, a glaze will get named after a region. And so maybe Oribe is a region. I should look that up. You think I'd know after almost 20 years? I would have had curiosity get the better of me and I would have looked that up. So this is the Oribe on no texture to begin with, just painted this little leaf on here with red iron oxide. And it's very simple, lovely little dish, just little pressed dish I made using GR pottery forms. So and then the kiln's empty. That's all that's in the kiln. That's it. But I know my Oribe is perfect. I know I don't have to change it at all as far as adding water or taking water away. Same with the cranberry. The cranberry came out perfect this time, but my Chun Blue, too thin. So now I need to go and I need to remove some water. So I'll probably remove about a cup of water. I made a big 5-gallon bucket, so I have a lot of water to remove. Probably a cup, maybe a cup and a half. Mix it all up and see how it is. Glaze another little piece, put it in the kiln and see how it works. If it looks bluer, then I know I'm good to go. If not, I'll remove more water. And that's part of the process. It's easier to add more water if it's too thick than it is to take water away if it's too thin. It's just how it works. So let's see if I got any more questions. Is glaze crackling usually done to a glaze due to glaze and clay misfit? Yeah, that's a glaze clay fit issue, exactly. Now some glazes are meant to do that. They have that effect to them. They're not functional glazes, they're not food safe when you have them do that, but you can put them on the outside of things and they'd be fine. But that's due to poor fit. That means your clay and your glaze shrink at different rates and they're not fitting together properly. And that's a huge thing. So your solutions for that, you have two options. One, you can try a different clay, or two, use a different glaze if you want to keep using that clay. So I use Laguna B-Mix 5 without grog. That's what all these pieces, that's this clay here, that's what all these pieces were glazed on. That's the clay I use the most. Now, Laguna does make a B-Mix 5 with grog, totally different clay, shrinks at a totally different rate. Glaze fit might not be the same. So you need to check your clays. I've also used my Oribe on the Laguna 16 porcelain, and I think it's the WC 413, I think. I've got to look it up, but the Laguna number 16 porcelain works great, just like the B-Mix for me. And so I have great results, never had any crazing or anything. So how to reopen a hole that's been glazed over, Barbara wants to know. So Barbara, you have like a colander or a berry bowl. Diamond Core Tools makes diamond bits that you can use with a Dremel or multi-tool. What are things called that are Dremel tools that are not made by Dremel?
Rotary tool.
Rotary tools. Thank you. I just call it Dremel tool, but you know it's like Xerox machines. It's not the same. It's a copier. So rotary tools, you can get a diamond bit. Diamond Core Tool makes them. Other companies might make them too. You can just use that to drill down in, and that's my best suggestion for that. But again, if you're gonna ever be like drilling into ceramic, you need to make sure you keep it wet. So if you have somebody there, they can maybe be the water pourer for you while you're drilling through, but that will work. And you can drill through the glaze and through the clay if you have to, but it will work. Oh, Drew wants to see the cranberry. Drew, the cranberry came out crazy good. I have to get out of the picture though, because the camera wants to focus on my face. How did your tests of my cranberry come out, Drew? Were they as awesome as this? So Drew and his family own Clayscapes Pottery, Drew Seymour, and his mom and his dad, Don and Kim. And they're going to be making and selling the cranberry soon. I don't know when. We were originally talking about the fall. Ooh, is that enough? Did you get enough of that? In your face. Sorry about that. Here's the, let me show it to you with the texture so you can see how that looks. And I'll give the folks at Instagram a close-up of it too. So there it is with the texture. So you can still see your texture. Now, it's a great glaze for texture, but it can sometimes hide subtle texture. So if you look at the Oribe versus the cranberry, you can see the Oribe is a much better option if you have a lot of texture. So you can see them. Can't see. There you go. I gotta pay attention to the folks over on Instagram. Sorry guys, I got 2 cameras. I'm trying to keep everybody happy. So what'd you think? Oh, 3 cameras. Sorry, I've got 3 because there's one above my head in the kiln, which is empty right now. So wait, scroll down. Oribe was a type of Japanese stoneware recognized by its freely applied glaze as well as its dramatic, thank you Terry, freely applied glaze as well as its dramatic visual departure from the more somber monochromatic shapes and vessels common in rakuware at the time. Right, and so raku, you know, in the tea service and all that, it was a lot of dark glazes. The Oribe is a very, maybe more bright, like that bright green, crazy bright, good green right there. You love, love, love the cranberry. I know. I tell you guys, when I was doing craft fairs and festivals, I would do bowls, like starting at this time of the year, I'd have like big medium-sized serving bowls, like a vegetable bowl, just this glaze, no texture on the piece at all, just this glaze. And they would all sell. This one in my lake blue, those 2 together, and somebody was asking about, this is my lake blue on porcelain. So you can see it's much brighter. It's like a powder blue on porcelain. But when you put it on something darker, it deepens. It gets much deeper. I love this on a dark or speckled clay, the lake blue. And this is cream on top. So you get a little, so you can see there's a little like separation going on there. So the folks there. All right, more questions? So that, but, it's even beautifuler up close. I love that. So what does it say about a glaze when you dip it and it looks all bubbly on the surface? Did you add too much water? No, Barbara. So what tends to happen is when you dip a glaze, air is coming out of the piece. That piece is absorbing the air. Is absorbing the glaze, and air is coming out like air bubbles, right? So it could be that the piece wasn't bisqued for long enough or hot enough, and you might have a lot of air bubbles left in your piece. It might be perfectly fine. You might glaze it, they might all melt over. Really the only thing you can do is glaze fire and see how it looks. And if you don't have any of those bubbles left, any pinholing, then you have nothing to worry about. That's just how it is. But I wouldn't say that you did anything wrong with the glaze, like it's too thin or too thick. So what I suggest is do a test piece. That's why I make these little dishes. People, people are always asking me about what you do with these. Well, I use them as glaze tests, and then when somebody purchases something, I give them a little dish because I have piles of them. because I'm always testing glazes with them. But it's a nice little, I love to give people thank yous. And when I do open studio weekend, I just have a basket full of these by my door. Of course, we're not doing open studio right now, but I have a basket of these, and everybody who comes gets to pick one, everybody. So if a whole family comes with like 6 people, everybody in that group of 6, they get to have a dish to take home with them. Because I make these to have as tests, and I'm always testing to get it right. The Oribe, yeah, they're both great. They're both great glazes. I mean, I've been using them for almost 20 years, so they've been through a lot with me as far as different clays, using them on different types of pieces. I'm trying to think, I don't have anything in the studio. I have a lot with Oribe because that's one of my favorite glazes to use. It looks great on carving. If you carve a piece, Kev, do you want to grab me a carved piece with Oribe on it? There should be some somewhere floating around. I just sent him off to find that. So what's the rule about mixing glaze? If you're mixing it from scratch, there's a lot. So go check out my Making Glazes class, and that'll help you through that. And I see another question about how big's the big kiln. It's 7 cubic foot for my electric. My gas kiln is 16 cubic foot. So that's 4 feet by like 2 by 2. That wasn't exactly something that's just carved with Oribe, like one of those pieces up top there on that shelf to your left. To your left all the way right now. Yeah. So I just want to show off what it can do if you carve a piece and you want a translucent glaze on top. The Oribe is great. One of those lidded jars. Oh, that'll work. Yeah, sure. That'll work. He got something. So my blue glaze recipe is also made by Clayscapes Pottery, so I can't give that recipe out, sadly enough. So this is an interesting thing. Here is my Oribe on porcelain. So you see how it has a bluish cast to it? Here is my Oribe on B-Mix. Same glaze. Same glaze. Porcelain, B-Mix. Totally different. Look at the difference here. Still gorgeous, but this is what I was talking about. If you do carving, there's nothing on here but this Oribe. That's the only glaze on the piece. And so the glaze itself fills in the carved lines and really highlights them and shows it off. So is this crazy or what? Porcelain versus B-Mix. So Sandra wants to know if I'm gonna try cream on top of the cranberry. I am going to do cream on top of the cranberry. I'm also going to do a couple other glazes and test with it and see. There are some things in this cranberry that make it a little finicky to work with other glazes. It wants to be a diva. This glaze wants to stand alone and be by itself. It doesn't really necessarily want other glazes competing with it. So I've done a few tests in the past and it's not worked out. They just go tan, like blah tan. But I'm going to do more testing for you, and I'll be sharing that. So, Clayscapes is so helpful, Barbara says. You called them the other day, and the gentleman went over every glaze. They are great. They are, and they will take the time to talk to you about glazes. They'll take the time to talk to you about kilns. Whatever you need, they're there for you. So they will happily help. Yeah, they're great people. They are. So I do have glaze recipes that you can get on clayshareresources.com. One of the things that I have, though, is I can't give you the recipes that Clayscapes makes and sells that are my glazes, because that's just part of our agreement. But there are glazes on there. A lot of those glazes are from about 20 years ago when I was doing production pottery. I don't necessarily use those glazes. Some of them I haven't used in 10 years. They're all good glazes, but I don't have a lot of examples, if any, of most of them, because I stopped making them and using them. So my suggestion is if you see a glaze on there you want to try and you want to know what it looks like, I could try to find a piece for you, but better than that, make a 100-gram batch. Make a little tiny bit, do a tiny little test piece, and see how that works for you. Because what I do in my studio is not going to be the same as what you do in your studio. So test those out. Those recipes are up there, and I actually need to go through my old glaze recipes, and there's some more I might be able to put up for everybody because I've had a few questions on the glazes and everything, and I want to give you recipes to try. It's just anything that Clayscapes and I agree to work together on, I can't put out there. So does my little kiln run on regular house current, Judy? So it doesn't. It runs on 240, and that's because if it ran on 120, it wouldn't get hot enough. This goes to cone 5, cone 6 happily all the time. If it was regular house current, it would only do 04, 05. And I do higher fire. So for me, that's not going to work. So I had to go with a 240. But this little kiln is available in a 120 version, yes. And if you only do earthenware and low fire pieces, that would be fine. You could use that. But for cone 5 or 6, you need to go with a 240. Yeah. So do I fire the porcelain to cone 5 just like B-Mix? Deb, I do. Yes, I do. This is cone 5. I fire them together. And so you can see the porcelain. Here's the difference in the clay. I don't know if you can tell. The bottom of the porcelain has a bluish cast to it. The bottom of the B-Mix is a warmer, creamier color. But they're very similar. So would I recommend buying a used kiln? If it's in good condition, yes. My first kiln was a used kiln, and it was an L&L. It was 30, almost 30 years old when I bought it, and it still worked. It was an old manual kiln sitter kiln made in like 71 or 2 or something. But I still have it. I don't use it currently, but I still have the kiln because I can't part with it. It's sentimental, you know. So how do you lower the glaze temperature? You have some high temperature recipes, but you want to fire them to cone 5 and 6, and you have the same effect. So there are some ways you can lower glazes, and I'll do a class on lowering a high fire glaze for you. And thing you have to be aware of is when you substitute materials and you take a cone 10 glaze. Kev, do you know my cone 10 pieces I did with the Oribe? They're the melon jars that are in the green. They have a bit of, some of them might have a bit of copper blush. They'll be to your right, probably straight ahead in the middle section. They're taller than they are wide, and they have wide mouths. So this, I'm going to show you the cone 10 version of, yep, that's it. So I'm going to show you the cone 10 version of this glaze. Yeah, Kevin, like, it's so dusty though. Oh, it's dusty. Hold on. Give me a thing to wipe it clean to get the dust off so you can really see it. Thanks. So this is that glaze. This is my Oribe. Here it is at cone 10. Very dusty. A very dusty cone 10. Fired at cone 10. So that's this glaze. And, ooh, that's nice. That's where it was near the edge of the gas kiln. And so we have a little more of the flame, a little more reduction happening over there, getting that to happen. And then this right up here on the top. Nice. So this was a cone 10 glaze that I brought down. And so it melts differently. And the colors are going to be different. Look at the vast difference here between these two. So this is on porcelain, though. This is stoneware. Now let's look at it at B-Mix. B-Mix on a similar colored clay in reduction. Totally different glaze. So you're going to have to be aware that the glaze won't look the same. It'll be similar, like they could be considered in the same family, but the tones and colors will be different because you're putting different ingredients in. And the glaze clay fit will be different too. So you're going to have to play with that. And I'll teach you all a class on doing that. We'll do that for ClayShare. I can make that happen. So, can you make mugs with earthenware glazed for use? You totally can, Doreen. A lot of people say earthenware is not food safe. It can be. The issue is you have to make sure you glaze the outside and the inside and glaze the bottom. And when you glaze the bottom, what you need to do is fire it on a stilt. You fire it on a kiln stilt. Do I have any kiln stilts floating around? It's in that, I think in that bowl to your second shelf down. So when you do earthenware, you need to glaze everything because you don't want water getting in to the clay. What happens with earthenware is it'll absorb water because it's still porous, and then bacteria can grow in there, and that's the big issue. So when you're making something out of earthenware, glaze your bottom and you stilt it. Now this is for earthenware. I do not stilt high fire pieces because they warp. They tend to buckle or warp. You'll find that out with plates. Now jewelry and small Christmas ornaments, you can stilt at higher fire temps, but big plates, I don't stilt. So what you would do is you would stilt, sit it on one of these stilts here, and you would just glaze fire your mug like this, and then when it's done, you might have three, because this has 3 points, 3 little bumps, sand them down with a little sanding pad, and they're fine. So that's what you do to make your to make all your earthenware food safe. Just glaze both sides, and that's the same with earthenware plates. You can still earthenware plates and fire them. The reason they don't warp is because they don't get to those hot temperatures that cause them to warp. I've got a ton of pots out now. Oh, so someone wants to see the dark blue carved vase. So let me show you that one again. And then I think, unless y'all got more questions. So here is my carved vase, and it's black speedball underglaze. And what I did is put my chun on top. So that's my chun blue on top. And there's the inside. All right, so your baby kiln goes to cone 5 on household current, Linda. Yes, but over time it's going to wear down faster. You're going to have to replace your elements faster. It's going to be harder on your kiln. So for the life of the kiln, it's better. Now, cone 5, but if you go to 7, and if I ever wanted to go to 10, I couldn't go to 10 with a 120 current. So this would allow me to go to cone 9 if I needed to do a test of a glaze for my gas kiln. I wouldn't get the same result as a reduction firing in my little electric kiln, but I would see if the glaze melted. So I at least could test for that. So for me, this was the smartest thing to do. But over time, your kiln works harder when it's not to 240. When it's at a 120, it makes it work really hard. But you can get there, yes. Yeah, totally will. So you get a reddish tint on your Oribe in the gas kiln, and that's from the copper. It's a chemical reaction, and copper reds are made that way too. So this one here, this Oribe, if we look at it up close, you might see there's some little specks in here, and some of the pieces, when I do it, I get more red. See if I had a copper red from my gas kiln out. I don't have one out. I've got an iron red, but that's totally not the same thing that I can grab. But you know, the thing about reduction firing and gas firing, there's so much going on in the atmosphere in there that it can change the way a glaze will look. So it can make, you know, one glaze look one way, one firing, and another way the next firing. All right, so let's see. You did the combination of marigold inside a mug, 3 coats of Tangelo outside, and then 3 coats of poppy around the Tangelo, and it crazed only at the bottom. Was it too thick? So if it pooled and it got a little cracking, it's probably a little too thick for that. So next time, just go a little thinner. Just go a little thinner, it should be all right. So you're just getting into pottery. Should your clay should be the same cone as your glaze. Zachary, yes. And when you buy your clay, you'll find out what it is. It'll say 5-6, it'll say 5, 5 to 8, but that's a thing. If it says cone 5 to 8 or 6 to 10, it's really a cone 10 clay. You always want to fire it to the top temp that it says on the box. But yes, so these are cone 5 glazes, but they can go to cone 6. This one can even go to cone 7 if it has to. And I have done it at 4, not intentionally, but in my older kiln, I had an element issue and it only got to 4 and it was fine. But you want to go to whatever temperature your clay says. You want to vitrify your clay, and that will be on the box from the manufacturer. How much is the baby kiln? It depends what you get. So if you get a 120 versus a 240, if you get the Genesis controller versus their regular controller, it depends on the sizes. There's lots of them. So the price range is huge. My suggestion is reach out to Drew at Clayscapes and he can tell you the different prices, because it's just like buying a car. You can't say, well, how much was your Jeep? It's like, but what did you get on your Jeep? Like, everybody gets different things in their cars, and that can make a huge difference in the pricing. So I'm not sure where they start at exactly, but reach out to him, and Clayscapes gives a fabulous discount. So if you're going to buy a kiln, even if you're not near where they are, they can get it sent to you. I mean, the kiln has to be shipped to you no matter what from L&L. So it doesn't matter where in the country you are, they can sell you a kiln. And they'll give you a great service too. They'll help you through that. All right. So any other questions that we got? Give you the name of the baby kiln. This is it's the L&L doll kiln, and it's the DLH-11. And it depends what you get. See, the DLH-11-DX, actually, 240 one phase. That's this configuration. Glaze looks like is there a glaze that looks like this at cone 5-6 oxidation? It's like an olive glaze is what you're looking for this color right here if you want this. I mean, you can do your own glaze testing and you can come up with the combination I'll get you here. Take a clear glaze, add a tiny bit of copper, maybe a bit of rutile, and that will get you there. So if you want to know more about making your own glazes, there's a bunch of great books out there on mixing your own glazes. Drew has a glaze class, and I know Drew's going to be doing some more glaze classes for us too. So earthenware is the one that's low fire. You have to glaze all over to waterproof it basically. Yeah, basically, and you're 100% right on that, yes. So earthenware is always porous. So what happens is water can get pulled in there, food particles can get pulled in there, and then bacteria can grow. And what will happen over time is you'll notice because of that, the glaze that is on the other side, so the bottom could be unglazed, but the glaze on the other side will start to crack and craze over time from use. So always if you're doing earthenware, glaze both sides, fire on a stilt, and you'll be good. You emailed me about stilts. If you glaze the bottom of a bird feeder, the shape of a hosta leaf, do I think they'll warp? You want to glaze the bottom because they'll be hanging and be seen. If it's cone 5 or 6, I think they probably will warp. Yes, yes. Because the clay reaches top temperature and becomes more malleable then, and it can melt. And if we look at a stilt, it'll melt onto this, you see. It'll start to, and that's with the higher fire pieces. Now, if you're making, let's see, you're making the bird feeder. What I did in the bottom of my bird feeder is I put a bit of underglaze and then wiped back because I had texture. So you could see something there. It wasn't just plain, but I didn't glaze it because I know it's a bird feeder. We want to see what's on the bottom, right? And then the hosta leaf, when I do big leaf pieces, I will put little tiny feet like these, and I just leave that little bit unglazed. That's all right there. So that you still see the glazing, but it's okay to have unglazed feet. I hope that answered the question. I hope that helps you with that. All right, so what else? Christina loves Drew at Clayscapes. We know you love him. We all love him. So you noticed that my past cone packs don't have holes. Yeah, don't need them. Don't need the holes in it. I only put holes in it if I'm in a hurry to get them to dry. But I usually make my cone packs usually a week or so before I need them, and I let them sit out and they're completely bone dry by the time I use them. So I don't ever have any problems with them blowing up in the kiln. They're also not crazy thick. Like you might look at them, it's not a big thick wad of clay. Now another option is you can actually get holders for your cones to go in, and then you just pull the little cones out and replace them every time. Or you can get self-supporting cones, and then you don't need to make a cone pack. You can just sit that on the shelf. I like to make my own because you can get twice as many cones for the same price than the self-supporting ones. So I can get 50 cone packs for the price of 25. So that's why I make my own. But I do have a class on making them too. So I teach y'all how to do that if you need to learn how. So I think I got you all. All right, Laguna Tan Speckle isn't earthenware, right? It's stoneware. Right, Kathy. Laguna Tan Speckle is not earthenware. It's stoneware. Yes. Yep, yep, yep. I call my kiln baby. Yes, baby kiln. It's baby. I call it baby. I tried to come up with something really fabulous and creative, but baby kiln stuck because it's my baby kiln. And so here it is, the baby kiln. It's about 1 cubic foot. That's the size of it. It's not a big kiln, but it's a test kiln. So it's not supposed to be a big kiln. If you want a big kiln, you get a different kiln. So I put them in with the base, bone dry, no bisque. Let me scroll back and see what you're asking. No, I always bisque. I never fire anything single fire. I always bisque fire my pieces, always. I know some people that single fire. I think it's awesome they do that. I am not that person. I always bisque fire everything. Okay, so one of the things you're doing is making candle vessels. You're planning to use cone 6 materials. Should that be safe for candles? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Zachary, absolutely, positively. I've made candle vessels for a long, long time. You can pour your own candles into your own pottery. Perfectly fine with cone 6. And you're going to retire from the Air Force next year. Hurrah, awesome. Look at you. Well, we won't talk military now because we could get in a conversation. It'll get us off subject, but thank you for your service too. All right, so that was the big thing, the orbe. Oh, I see there's a question, what is the difference between stoneware and earthenware? So you basically have earthenware, which is cone 0405. You have stoneware, which is a little hotter. That's cone 56. So that's around 2167 degrees Fahrenheit for maturation. And then you have high fire, which is also stoneware, and porcelain can be mid-range too, down at cone 5, and that's usually 2400 degrees Fahrenheit. And down at earthenware temps, you're looking at like 1900 degrees, but it varies. Some people go to cone 01 with their earthenware. Some people do 06 with their earthenware. So there's a huge firing range. It just depends what you're doing. For me, I do a lot in the mid-range in the cone 5 because it's really accessible, and I love firing my electric kilns because they're easier to work with than my gas kiln. Nothing wrong against my gas kiln. I love that kiln. It's just a lot of work. So, all right, let's see if we can get the rest of these questions. B mix fired to cone 5, okay in the microwave. Kathy, so as long as you don't put a luster on top and do a third firing, you can put it in the microwave. If you put a metallic luster on top, it might arc. But as far as a glazed cone 5 piece, yeah, this could go in the microwave. This could go in the dishwasher. This could go in my kitchen and I could have a little cookie on it. And that's probably what's going to happen. All right, so today's big thing was the, oh, okay, so wait, got a question. You're referring to the cone packs. Yeah, you don't bisque them. No, don't bisque your cone packs. Nope. You make them out of raw clay, and then you let them get bone dry, and then you just put them in your kiln. You do not bisque them, because if you bisque them, it will affect the heat work, and you won't get accurate results. So no, you do not have to bisque them. Nope. Do not. All right, so the big thing was the oribe and the cranberry reveal, and I'll have to talk to Drew about when these could be available. I personally feel like the oribe should be out soon because it's summer, and how gorgeous are leaf pieces with this gorgeous green. It's so nice. And the cranberry, yeah, I mean, I think that's summery too, although you could wait till fall, right? All right, so if you have questions, you can email me. Barbara said she emailed me and I didn't get back to her. I get hundreds of emails and messages every day, sometimes more than hundreds. It's a little crazy, and I try to keep up with it. But if I don't get back to you, like I suggest, and I'm so glad Barbara mentioned it here, ask me again. Keep asking till I get back to you. It's not that I ignore people. It's just hard. I'm one person. I don't have an assistant. It's just me answering everything and making the classes and doing all the pottery. So we have Kevin that does the IT and helps run the website and is like the master of editing and production and that. But I have to get to everybody individually to answer you. So it takes me a little bit of time to get to everyone. So if you come on a live broadcast, I'm here right now. You can ask me. So that's my suggestion. I will be live on Wednesday because you know what we're doing Wednesday? Y'all know what we're doing? If you don't, I'm going to tell you what we're doing. We are giving away 3 12-packs of Speedball Underglaze. That's right. That's what we're doing. We're giving those away. And I'm going to do a little demo using the Speedball Underglazes before. So we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to do a little tutorial, a little pottery tutorial at 5 to about 5:30, 5:45. And then at 5:45, we're going to announce the winners of the giveaway. So you got to come Wednesday to see who won, and also to check out the little Speedball. I'm going to do a version of Sgraffito you may or may not have seen before, but it won't be a whole piece. We're only going to be putting underglaze on part of pieces and then carving through it. So that'll be the Wednesday tutorial. And then we'll be giving away the Speedball underglazes, and we'll maybe talk more about when Clayscapes is going to have my oribe and my cranberry. But no pressure, Drew. You know what happened with my chun? Everybody hounded Drew so much to get them to have my chun blue. They had to like quick rush it to have it because people kind of went crazy for it because it's beautiful. All right, everybody, have a wonderful Sunday. I hope if you have time to be in your studio, you get to have some time for yourself there. Do whatever makes you happy. And I will catch you all Wednesday. Until then, everyone, take care.